All right, today we're talking about something that could be a huge advantage for businesses in India. It's called a Special Economic Zone, or an SEZ. And listen, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to want to pay attention, because understanding this could give you a massive competitive edge. So let's get right into it.
I mean, just imagine for a second. What if there was a place where all the usual headaches of doing business just melted away? A spot where the tax bills were way lighter and the rulebook was way simpler, all designed to help you grow, export, and really compete on the world stage. Well, that's exactly the promise of an SEZ.
So, what is this thing really? An SEZ is basically a specific fenced off area inside the country where the normal economic laws don't quite apply. The whole idea is to create this super investor friendly bubble that pulls in foreign money, cranks up exports, and of course, creates a ton of jobs. Now, you really have to catch this key phrase deemed to be foreign territory. That little bit of legal language, it's everything. It means that when it comes to trade, taxes, and duties, the government treats this zone like it's another country. So moving your goods in or out isn't a domestic transaction. It's treated like an import or an export. And that is what unlocks some absolutely incredible financial benefits. But an environment this good for business doesn't just happen by accident. It's all built on a really solid legal foundation. And for India, that foundation is the Special Economic Zones Act of 2005. Honestly, this piece of legislation was a total game changer. It created a stable, official rulebook for how all of this works. The idea itself has been around for a while. Actually, India set up Asia's very first export processing zone way back in 1965. But things really kicked into high gear after a new policy in 2000, which led to that big 2005 act. Once the official rules were locked in place in 2006, the growth of these zones just exploded. So what makes this act so powerful? Well, it cuts right through some of the biggest business headaches. First, there's the single window clearance. That means you, the entrepreneur, don't have to run around to a dozen different government offices to get approvals. It also creates a much simpler system for taxes and finances. And crucially, it gives each SEZ its own management authority, which means decisions get made faster and more efficiently right there on the ground. And it's so important to remember the main goal here. The government's objective was crystal clear. This wasn't just about giving out tax breaks for fun. It was a strategic move to fire up the whole national economy, supercharge exports, and create jobs on a massive scale. Okay, so the perks are pretty obvious, and we know the law is solid. But if you're an entrepreneur, the next logical question is, how do I get a piece of the action? Who are the gatekeepers I need to talk to? Right. Getting the okay to set up shop inside an SEZ isn't a free-for-all. There's a process, a clear chain of command. So let's break down the two most important players you're going to have to deal with. Wow, okay, when you see a flowchart like this, I know it can look a little intense, right? All those arrows and boxes. But don't worry about all that. The whole system is actually designed to streamline things. We're just going to boil it down and focus on the two key groups that make all the critical decisions. First up, you have the Board of Approval. You can think of these guys as the top brass, the highest level of authority. This is the central group that looks at proposals for brand new SEZs and gives the final thumbs up or thumbs down on whether a zone can even exist in the first place. Now, once a zone is up and running, your go-to person is the Development Commissioner. This is your guide on the ground. They're the ones who help entrepreneurs like you get set up, they push to make sure the zone is developing efficiently, and they keep an eye on how all the businesses inside are performing. All right, let's get to the part I'm sure you've been waiting for. We've talked about the why and the how, but now it's time for the what. What are the actual, tangible, bottom line benefits you get for setting up your business inside one of these special economic zones? I mean, the difference between being inside an SEZ versus outside is just night and day. Look at it side by side. A regular business is dealing with standard national taxes and customs duties. But a unit inside an SEZ gets huge exemptions. A regular business has complex regulatory hurdles. An SEZ has simplified compliance. It's a completely different world for your business. Let's start with one of the biggest ones, a massive financial win, being free from customs duties. Seriously, for any business that brings in raw materials or ships out finished products, this is an absolute game changer. It saves a fortune. So this exemption basically creates a duty-free island for trade, and it's really comprehensive. It applies to goods and services, and it helps out both the entrepreneurs and the people who develop the SEZ itself. So whether you're bringing stuff in or sending stuff out, you are shielded from those customs duties.
And the good news doesn't stop at the border. On top of avoiding customs duties, being in an SEZ also protects you from a whole bunch of major domestic taxes that pretty much every other business in the country has to deal with.
So what are we talking about here? Well, you're exempt from central sales tax. There's no service tax. And if you're a financial company and a special type of SEZ called an IFSC, you don't even have to pay the securities transaction tax. Every single one of these exemptions goes straight to your bottom line.
Now, while these perks for individual companies are amazing, it's really important to zoom out for a second and see the big picture. SEZs aren't just fancy business parks. They're deliberately designed to be powerful engines for the entire country's economic growth.
And a really cool evolution of this whole idea is the International Financial Services Center, or IFSC. You can think of it as an SEZ, but instead of being for manufacturing, it's built for money. Its whole purpose is to be a hub for global finance, with its own international-style laws, all to attract foreign capital.
And if you want to see what this looks like in the real world, just look at Gift City in Gujarat. It's India's very first IFSC, built from scratch as this futuristic smart city. It's designed to go head-to-head with global financial centers like Singapore and London, and it's pulling in huge international investments. This quote just nails it. It really gets to the heart of why these zones are so strategic. They're specifically designed to demolish the usual roadblocks. You know, the red tape, the infrastructure problems that can slow business down. They create this perfectly smooth runway for global companies to land their operations. So when you put it all together, SEZs are doing a lot of heavy lifting. They're reviving manufacturing, they're a magnet for foreign direct investment, they're helping cutting-edge industries grow, and, this is a big one, they're plugging Indian companies directly into the global supply chain. You know, from that very first zone back in 1965 to the super high-tech financial centers of today, these zones have been a central part of India's economic game plan. They've proven to be an incredibly powerful tool. And that leaves us with a really interesting question to think about. What comes next? What's going to be the next big idea that drives India's economy forward?